In 2004, Nokia shelved a working touchscreen smartphone and watched $150 billion in company value evaporate over the next 8 years. Yet the executives who made that call retired quietly, with full pensions, and nobody ever said their names on the evening news. They knew, and they buried it. So why has no one ever told you this? Nokia was untouchable. In 2007, the year Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and changed everything, Nokia owned 40% of every mobile phone sold on Earth. 40%. It was the most dominant hardware company on the planet. Finnish engineering, indestructible hardware, the name in telecommunications. In boardrooms and newspapers, Nokia wasn't just a phone company, it was the phone company, the standard, the benchmark every competitor measured itself against. Reliable, innovative, unstoppable, that was the story. But 3 years before that keynote, deep inside Nokia's research labs in Espoo, Finland, engineers had already built it. A touchscreen, internet-connected, intuitive. In 2004, Nokia researchers demonstrated a working prototype of a device that looked, by every account of the people in that room, almost identical to what Apple would unveil in January 2007. The engineers brought it to management. They laid it on the table. They showed what it could do, and the answer was no. Not because the technology didn't work. It worked. Not because the market wasn't ready. The market was screaming for it. The answer was no because Nokia had a different problem, one that had nothing to do with phones and everything to do with politics. But that's not even the part they really didn't want out. Jorma Ollila ran Nokia. And Ollila presided over a culture where the people closest to him competed against each other so viciously that good ideas died before they ever reached the top floor. Here is what happened inside that building. Middle managers knew Symbian, Nokia's operating system, was dying. Engineers filed reports. Researchers presented data. Internal memos circulated that said plainly that touchscreens were the future and Nokia's software couldn't support them. Those memos were filtered, softened, rewritten by the time they reached senior leadership. The people who delivered bad news at Nokia got punished for it, so they stopped delivering it. They told the executives what the executives wanted to hear. Symbian was fine. The feature phones were selling. There was no urgency. Meanwhile, in Cupertino, California, a team of Apple engineers was reading the same market data Nokia's researchers had already buried. When the iPhone launched on June 29, 2007, Nokia's official response was dismissal. Anssi Vanjoki, Nokia's head of multimedia, publicly called the iPhone a niche product, a toy for Americans. He said on the record that Nokia's devices were superior. 2 years later, Nokia's global market share had dropped from 40% to under 30%. By 2011, it was below 15%. By 2013, Nokia sold its entire phone division to Microsoft for $7.2 billion. That number is the gut punch. At its peak, Nokia's market capitalization had reached $150 billion. In 2013, they handed the whole phone business to Microsoft. The division they had told investors for 6 straight years was their core asset, for $7.2 billion. Microsoft then wrote down nearly the entire acquisition 3 years later, took a $7.6 billion loss, and walked away from it entirely. The 2004 prototype that never shipped. Engineers who worked on it later said the device they built was, in their words, ahead of what Apple released. Not behind it, ahead of it. Nokia did not lose the smartphone era because it lacked the technology. It lost because the people running the company were more afraid of each other than they were of their competitors. Now here is the part nobody reported. Jorma Ollila stepped down as CEO in 2006 and moved to chairman of the board, where he remained through the entire collapse. When Stephen Alap took over as CEO in 2010 and wrote his now famous internal memo comparing Nokia to a man standing on a burning platform, Ollila was still in the room. Nokia's board approved executive compensation through every year of the decline. Bonuses were paid in years when market share was in freefall. And when the Microsoft deal finally closed, the executives who engineered the sale, including Alap, received accelerated stock awards that vested immediately. Alap walked away with roughly $25 million. No regulatory investigation. No shareholder lawsuit that changed anything. No public reckoning. The Finnish government, Nokia's largest institutional backer, accepted it quietly. The architects of the collapse were simply gone. Nokia's story gets told as a cautionary tale about missing a trend, an innovation failure, a company that couldn't adapt. But that is not what the internal documents show. What they show is a company that had the answer, buried it because the politics made honesty too dangerous, and then watched a competitor ship the same idea 3 years later, while the people responsible collected their exit packages and disappeared from the headlines. The technology was never the problem. The question worth sitting with is this: how many products are sitting in a filing cabinet right now, in a company you trust, because the engineer who built it knew better than to bring it upstairs?